Hey guys, today we'll take a look at the 50 best JRPGs ever that are incredibly long, and I mean the main story alone. Add side quests and extra content and oh boy, the length increases a lot. Anyway, this list is in random order, so let's begin. Number 50, Dragon Quest VII. The original PS1 version of this game is incredibly long. Actually, you'd be surprised to know that this is the longest JRPG ever made from the Golden Age. I'm not sure why it was made this long, probably because the game doesn't have any fast travel features whatsoever, so you always end up backtracking everywhere. And also, it's a big grind fest, and without leveling up a lot, you won't be able to make much progress. It can go all the way up to 60 plus hours long if you stick to the main story alone. Number 49, Xenoblade Chronicles. This is a game that is nowhere near as long as people make it out to be, unless of course you do all the side quests and extra content, especially in the definitive version on the Switch. But honestly, the main story alone can be completed in about 45 hours, grinding included if you play it on normal. Number 48, Rogue Galaxy. This beast is only long for two simple reasons. 1. The encounter rate is high, so you'll be getting into battle a lot. 2. Dungeons and areas are stupidly long, and since the map design is convoluted, you'll be getting lost a lot. So at least 40 hours of playtime focusing on the main story alone is what you'll do, to say the least. Number 47, Octopath Traveler. This modern, influential, retro-looking RPG is one of the biggest grind fests of the current generation. But really, even without the grinding, it will still be here. Thing is, you got 8 characters to take care of, each with several chapters. If you try to focus on your main character's route alone, you'll grind forever, so the game kinda forces you to do the others. I did 53 hours total in this beautiful RPG. Number 46, Arc Rice Fantasia. Another grind fest. Yes, you'll see a lot of them in this video because making them hard and removing difficulty settings is a cheap way to make your RPG longer. So nearing 50 hours long, I'd say about 30% of that went into just fighting, since bosses are freaking brutal in this game. Number 45, Record of Agarist War. This is a game where grinding takes forever because it's a strategy RPG and battles are quite challenging even against regular monsters, so you'll spend a lot of hours alone just fighting. But the real reason why it's so long is because you've got 5 generations of characters to go through, each lasting between 10 and 15 hours long. Yeah, it might be one of the longest JRPGs in this whole video. Number 44, Final Fantasy VIII. The only reason why this game is the longest Final Fantasy of the PS1 era is because most people, including me, never knew how to properly play it. When the internet got big, everyone figured it out, of course, but even so, 40 hours minimum is what most players were putting focusing on the main story alone. Number 43, Persona 3. Any version of this game is ridiculously long. Original PS2 versions will take at the very least 50 hours to beat, and that was playing it on easy. Lots of people did that to avoid the brutality of your uncontrolled party members. PSP version fixed that, but still took a big chunk of your time. And let's not get into the remake called Reload, which took me 65 hours to beat on normal mode. Damn! Number 42, the Mary Skelter Trilogy. I'm putting all of these together because I've only played the first 2 games. I believe the second one is the longest. Sticking to main story alone will easily surpass the 40-hour mark, and that's a stretch. The first one is about 40 hours actually, maybe a bit more if you do side quests. I don't know about the third one, but I'm sure someone in the comments will let us know. Number 41, Tactics Ogre Reborn. Yeah, I can only speak for the remaster on PS4 and Switch because that's the one I put almost 50 hours in. I barely did any side quests, and if I did, it was because I needed to grind. Funny since this game has a level cap per chapter, but grinding is still required to get other stuff. It's an extremely challenging game with long ass maps, so yeah, chances are you'll do about 50 hours of main story alone too. Number 40, Trails of Cold Steel. A bit over 40 hours this one, of course that's if you stick to the main story alone or normal mode, grinding included. Well, for a PS3, PS Vita RPG it wasn't that much, but still these games were designed to do side quests more often than usual, so most players will easily surpass that time frame. And no, the sequel isn't in this video, it can be beaten in less than 40 hours even on normal mode. Number 39, Dragon Quest VIII. This one is an even bigger grindfest than its lengthy predecessor, but it's actually shorter. Still, my file says I did 58 hours and 11 minutes. At least 30% of that went into grinding for EXP and money to afford the super expensive equipment I needed. Number 38, Project Cross Zone 1. There are two reasons why this incredibly addicting crossover is at least 55 plus hours long. Because there are tons of characters and everyone always has to say something. And also because the maps are ridiculously long, about half of them taking at least 1 hour to complete. Yeah, it's insane, but it's also insanely good. Number 37, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Once again, the game isn't as long as they say, story will take you about 40 something hours to beat on normal mode, maybe more if you get lost a lot like I did, cause the map is a damn puzzle in itself. It's also harder than its predecessor, so grinding will increase the length easily. Number 36, Tales of Arise. The Tales games aren't usually long, sticking to the main story on easy or normal modes will usually take players between 25 and 40 hours max. Arise is longer because it's one of the hardest in the series, and because it was a very ambitious project, so the main story, including lengthy dungeons and exploration, takes about 50 hours to complete, unlike Berseria that takes 40 or less no matter what. Number 35, Strange Journey. Just like with the Mary Skelter Trilogy, this is a dungeon crawler in first person. Those are usually long games by design, but for some reason Atlus made the labyrinths here ridiculously long with puzzles and random encounters, so yeah, good luck sticking to 40 hours, cause I'm almost sure you'll do way more than that. Number 34, The Legend of Dragoon. This game isn't that long, but for a PlayStation 1 title, it sure was. For today's standards, the length is nothing long though, so you won't be surprised if I told you I did 41 hours and 16 minutes, grinding included, even though this game isn't that grindy. But yeah, PS1 JRPGs tended to be around 30 hours back then, so there. Number 33, Final Fantasy XII. Because getting from point A to point B takes forever, and because the grinding is absurd, this is easily a 50 plus hour long game, and I'm talking about the original PS2 version. I know its remaster can take a bit less since the difficulty was rebalanced. Number 32, Uta Warerumono Mask of Truth. I can't believe I put over 50 hours in this game on normal mode. Its predecessors were nowhere near as long, and this one has no side quests whatsoever. It's just the incredible amount of story and dialogue that made it stupidly long. Yes, this is the third chapter and you need to play the other two before it. Definitely worth it. Number 31, Persona 4. This game's about the same length as Persona 3, maybe a bit more if you succeed in getting the true root and ending. Persona games are naturally long by design because you're often forced or very, very tempted to do side content. 60 hours minimum here. Number 30, Yakuza Like a Dragon. This one shouldn't be that long if you stick to the main story. No difficulty settings exist and there's a huge spike later on that'll force you to spend hours and hours of grinding. So with that said, 40 to 45 hours long, the main story alone. Number 29, God Eater 2 Rage Burst. Well, this game has 2 arcs, and since the second arc is impossibly difficult, you'll spend most of your playthrough on it. First arc should take you about 20 to 25 hours, so that's nothing compared to modern JRPG standards. Second arc will take about the same or more, so yeah, there you go. Number 28, Octopath Traveler 2. Just like its predecessor, completing every character's chapters and grinding a lot will definitely net you over 50 hours of playtime. It's a bit easier than the first one though, but still very challenging and very worth playing. Number 27, Dragon Quest IX. Yup, another Dragon Quest. It's like they followed the lengthy trend 7 had created and went on from there, but this one feels more quest driven than the others, probably because of the multiplayer feature, so we're talking about 50 to 60 hours of main story alone here. Number 26, Record of Agarist War 2. Thankfully, this sequel didn't go overboard like the first game, only 3 generations this time around, and it wasn't a strategy RPG anymore. Still, each one takes about 15 hours to complete, so if we add the endless grinding, your file will probably say 50 hours at the very least. Number 25, Xenoblade Chronicles X. All Xenoblade games are open world, but this one takes the cake on that, so it really varies a lot how long this game really is. A consensus is based around the 16-hour mark, maybe more depending on what you do. I'm guessing it's a bit less than that if you focus on the main story alone. Number 24, Project Cross Zone 2. Here's another one that learned its lesson. 40-something hours should be enough to complete, considering there is no side content whatsoever. So not that much, right? But most 3DS JRPGs weren't this long, at least not in terms of main story. Number 23, Disgaea. I wasn't sure which one to pick here because they're all massive grind fests, but depending on how you fight and strategize, you can beat them all in less than 40 hours. According to howlongtobeat.com, the very first Disgaea game seems to be the longest no matter the version. Makes sense, as it is the freaking hardest. Number 22, Trails in the Sky Second Chapter. Yes, this sequel is longer. First game takes about 30 to 35 hours to complete, but they needed to wrap most of the things up in the second chapter that it was expanded and a bit more challenging. Playing on normal mode should show up at least 40 hours of playtime. Yes, that's not much nowadays, but it was in the PSP era. Number 21, Tears to Tiara 2. Remember Uta Warerumono? Well, this game's similar. Half of it is visual novel, which means a crap ton of story and dialogue. The other half is strategy RPG. Uta Warerumono has much more reading though, but still you'll do way more than 50 hours because, you know, grinding. Number 20, Suikoden 3. Here's the thing with Suikoden 3. You ignore recruiting all 108 characters, stick to the main story, and you'll do about 40 hours. Probably a bit more since it's the hardest of the bunch, but if you get them all, you'll get closer to 50 hours long. Number 19, Persona 5. Yeah, well, this game had to be here. The games just kept getting longer and longer with each entry. On top of it all, this one got a Royal Edition with tons of extra content, but vanilla version is a 75-hour long game at the very, very least. One of the longest JRPGs ever created. Number 18, Trails of Cold Steel 3. Well, since the first two games were successful, Falcom decided to expand the world, add more characters, especially from the previous sagas, and therefore increase the dialogue. One of those where everybody's gotta say something, always. But it's also a challenging game, so playing this on normal mode is at least a 65-hour long game if you stick only to the main story. Number 17, Eternal Poison. This one is a strategy RPG, sometimes having you play through 2 maps in a row, each taking easily 30 minutes or more. If we add that you've got 3 main characters, each with their own arc, to go through, and 1/4 protagonist unlocked afterwards, main story alone will net you around 50 hours to complete. Number 16, Tales of Graces F. This is the hardest Tales game ever made, so imagine the grinding. Even on easy you'll have to grind. But there's another reason why playtime usually kicks between 45 and 50 hours, and that's because there are 3 story arcs here, so the main plot alone is naturally longer than your average Tales game. Number 15, Magna Carta. This isn't a JRPG, but rather a Korean RPG. I decided to invite it over to this video because my file says 48 hours and 30 minutes, and that's sticking to the main story alone, close to 0 side quests involved. You know, I do a lot of side quests in other RPGs, but for some reason I skipped most of them here. It's an underrated game with a long story, but not that much dialogue, ironically. It's also quite challenging and grinding takes forever, even though battles aren't that long. Definitely give this one a chance if you emulate it or find it for a decent price, because it's exclusive to the PlayStation 2. Number 14, Unicorn Overlord. The reason why this game can easily lurk between 45 and 55 hours is because missions are long and challenging, but an even bigger reason is that you'll often do some of them without even knowing they were optional in the first place. Number 13, Suikoden 5. The longest Suikoden game. Challenging, expanded story, dungeons, exploration, a bit slow at the beginning. Still, if you stick to the main story, you shouldn't have any reasons to surpass the 50-hour mark. Unless you're like me and want to recruit every single character in the game. Add at least 5 to 10 hours more for that. Number 12, Dragon Quest XI. At this point, it shouldn't surprise you to see the latest game in the series in this video. Between 45 and 50 hours sounds reasonable for the main story, that's what I did after all, but the game will force you into its post-game for spoiler reasons, and it's freaking brutal, so add at least 10 more hours of playtime because of that. Number 11, Persona Q. Dungeon crawlers in first person. This little spin-off crossover between Persona 3 and 4 contains a story as large as 50 hours long. My file says I did more. And there's also a post-game to get the true ending, but it's ridiculously hard, so yeah. Number 10, Persona Q2. The sequel for some reason wasn't as lengthy, but it still can take way more than 40 hours to beat. Interesting considering this one crossovers with Persona 3, 4 and 5, so it should have more story and dialogue, right? I lied, it's just as long and challenging as its predecessor. Number 9, Xenogears. This game's got a big story to tell and it focused on it a lot during the second disc, so that adds a lot to the playtime, but the reality is that you'll get lost easily in the dungeons because of the poor camera and exploration, also getting into a crap ton of battles that aren't done quick. My file ended up saying 50 hours and 43 minutes, which is incredibly long for a PS1 JRPG. Number 8. Namco Cross Capcom. I saved the first in the series for last because it's by far the longest. I've played a lot of fan-translated JRPGs and not a single one comes even close. We're talking about a 74-hour long game with nothing but main story, no side quests exist here, just a gazillion characters and their endless chit-chat. Well, the game's got a ton of personality and charisma for that, so I still strongly recommend it. Number 7. Trails of Cold Steel 4. Of course the fourth episode had to be here, which is just as long as the third one. It all depends on how you play the game, but it's one of those that makes it irresistible to do certain side quests. Whatever the case, you're looking at 60 hours minimum of main story alone on normal mode. Number 6. Tales of Legendia. If you just want to beat the main story of this game, you'll do less than 30 hours actually, but it's bare bones and lots of plot holes will remain. I'd like to think the game has 2 arcs, and the second arc is the character quest episodes. That's quite possibly another 20 hours branch to complete. Number 5. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. This direct sequel takes about the same amount of time as the first one, maybe a bit more since you have 2 main characters to play as simultaneously. My file says I did 53 hours, but I did do a lot of side quests, so I'm guessing the main story alone should take about 45 hours to complete. Number 4. Spectral Souls. Meet one of the biggest grind fests in the history of gaming. Agarist War level, man. No generations here, but instead 3 main characters, each with their own party, and you can switch to any of them at any given time. But you'll have to complete their routes if you want to fight the final boss. Don't be surprised if you surpass 50 hours, which is a ton for a PSP JRPG, more than half of that spent on just grinding. Number 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This is officially the longest of the trilogy. The main story alone will take you about 50 plus hours to complete, and that's if you ignore recruiting other characters and doing their long quests, cause if you do, it'll easily surpass 60 or even 70 hours. Number 2. Trails into Reverie. Surprisingly, this is shorter than Cold Steel 3 and 4. Despite controlling 3 different parties simultaneously, the main story alone doesn't even surpass the 50-hour mark, and on normal mode. Sure, do side quests and beat the post-game dungeon, and the timer will go all the way up to 65 or 70 at least. Number 1. Growlancer Heritage of War. A blind first-time playthrough of this masterpiece should take you between 40 to 45 hours, barely any grinding involved. So why is it so long? Because it's got 5 story arcs, 4 that act as prologues, which take about 4 hours each, and the rest of the main story alone that takes about 30. So those were the 50 best and longest JRPGs that I played. If you have one more that I didn't include, put it in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!